Join your host, Maddie Roach, as she brings you into a community of fee-only financial advisors who are successfully building profitable businesses that serve the next generation of clients. Learn from innovative advisors whose unique stories will inspire you to dream big and take action on your goals. Are you ready to live your best life and help your clients live theirs? Then you're in the right place.
Hello, and welcome to XYPN Radio, episode 314. I'm Maddie Roach, your host. I'm excited to share the following discussion with you for a number of reasons, listeners, specifically because I want to paint the picture that there's not a one-size-fits-all approach to starting and scaling a practice. Many folks are interested in building a lifestyle practice and not an enterprise business, and that's okay. XYPN member Spencer Stevens, founder of Rooted Intent, a fee-only firm in Salt Lake City, Utah, opened his firm in 2017. And today he discusses why he serves a smaller client base than others who have been doing it as long as him. He discusses why he continued to stay employed at his father's CPA practice full-time while he built his firm. Spencer's a dad of 5, or what he says is a handful of kids, literally. It was important for him to get into this giving profession to help his clients the way that works best for them and him. I asked Spencer about his intentionality around building slowly, and he shares his annual expenses. Hint, it's still under $10,000 a year, and what his plans are for ramping up. Spencer is so likable and really shares his story in a meaningful way. If you're considering starting a practice at a slower rate or on a part-time basis, then this episode's going to be for you. Avocado toast, selfies, a mountain of student loan debt. Gen Y is anything but traditional, and with over 75 million people, it's a population you don't want to ignore. Learn more about how to serve this unique population in our guide called Attract and Profitably Serve Millennial Clients in Your RIA. Discover 3 key ways to tap into the millennial market and 6 things that they want from their financial advisor. Visit xyplanningnetwork.com/millennials for your free copy. Also, be sure to go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to join our private group just for XYPN radio listeners. It's a community of advisors we've all been looking for that's there to provide support when we need it the most. Best of all, it's free. I encourage you to check it out. Again, that's xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP. Hello, Spencer. Welcome to XYPN Radio. I'm so thrilled to have you. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Maddie. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. So we're here to talk about all things Spencer and what you've built. So let's get the listeners up to speed a little bit. Would you mind introducing yourself, please?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. All things Spencer, you might just want to hang up right now. No, my firm name is called Rooted Interest. It took me a long time to come up with the name, and just all kinds of things flowing in and out. And eventually I looked at my daughter's jacket one day and I saw that the label on it said French toast. And I thought, okay, if a clothing company can be called French Toast, then it really doesn't matter what the name is as much as what you're actually doing, right?
Oh, good reminder.
Yeah. But so I liked Rooted Interest because it's kind of like a blend of having someone rooting for you, like cheering you on in life. And then also like putting your best interest first, kind of like with CFP fiduciary mix there. So yeah, I settled with Rooted Interest. It's just been a lifestyle practice. And that's my plan, is just to keep it that way. But life changes and you never know, it might evolve to something more. So I got registered in August of 2017, based out of Salt Lake City, Utah. Right now, I currently have about $4 million in assets under management with about 14 clients. And, the client base, it's all kinds of age groups. I've got as young as like 20 up to as old as 71. So yeah, pretty diverse, pretty broad spectrum there. I just enjoy working with people. It brings me a lot of happiness. So it's hard to say no. Yeah. And then I guess right where I am now, as far as my service offering, is I have investment management services And I primarily use First Descent Asset Management. So the fee for that is 85 basis points up until $3,900 when we just cap fees. So it's pretty unique, I would say, in the industry, but makes a lot of sense to me as far as, the service level doesn't necessarily grow just because an account is larger. So it kind of makes sense. And then in addition to that, I also have a comprehensive planning option that's usually $2,000 to $3,000. Takes about a month or three to, go through the various stages of a financial plan. And then I do have an hourly planning fee as well. So yeah, firm is primarily virtual. So it worked out great with all the COVID stuff. No hiccups really there. Yeah. So, so far I'm happy with where I am. And optimistic about the future.
Yeah, great. Well, I'm excited to have you on the podcast, Spencer, because you started this intro kind of saying that this was a lifestyle practice. And when we think about kind of other average sized firms at your level in terms of how long you've been here, we would see double or triple the amount of clients. But you've really been intentional about how you handle your time, your personal life, and your other outside business activities, as we could call them. So could you expand a bit on why you chose a lifestyle practice when you started this in 2017? Why was it important to create a lifestyle practice?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say I might not have started it the right way.
Mm-hmm.
So hearing things about different firm owners, it's great to have like 5 years of savings, so you have a great runway to dedicate your time to it. I didn't have that. I have 5 kids also. And so I was hesitant to, jump fully in and kind of throw our finances up in the air a little bit. Felt I needed some more stability. So those were kind of the main driving forces, at least to start off kind of small and just gradually work things out. I've been working with my dad, who has a CPA firm, for the past 7 years. And that's been one of the main pieces in why this has been able to work out so well, because it is just a family practice. So there's a lot of flexibility involved there. So I can kind of, clock in, clock out when I need to help my firm clients, or, just work on my logo, things like that. But it still provides, a steady paycheck. And so I guess ultimately, that's kind of why I've been just doing it part-time as of now. But the long-term goal is to eventually kind of taper things and transition to doing it full-time.
Yeah, I think the diversity in people's approaches to launching businesses is particularly interesting, especially those of you that choose to do it part-time, because we've seen more and more folks choose to do it part-time, not necessarily because they don't have the finances or this, but they have competing priorities. And it sounds like your role at the CPA firm was a priority. And then financially, it made a lot of sense to build something on the side. And so how do you think doing this part-time has impacted kind of the growth trajectory of your firm? And are you on pace for what you wanted to build?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. So it definitely has hindered it. Obviously, I don't have as much of a capacity to be out there, marketing and working on branding and things like that. All I've done marketing wise is just built my own website and made business cards. So it's really just kind of been word of mouth, or people finding me through, XYPN, Find an Advisor portal, or NATFA, or just Google searches. I think I'm still in a pretty unique space, at least in Utah, being a CFP and fee only. It's kind of hard to find still. So, but as far as growth goes, in preparation for this, I kind of tried to look at my metrics. I'm not good at tracking them at all. But yeah, so I kind of looked at like my conversion ratio, and So I basically boiled it down to if I was contacted by anyone, I kind of like tracked stuff, at least going back through emails and my CRM and
Good for
stuff
you.
like that. And so I broke it down into two different categories. One being like having minimal interaction with clients. So I use Right Capital and they have like their leads program. So sometimes things come through there or just prospects, from NAPFA or XYPN. And if I have like minimal interaction with them, a basic phone call or, just email exchanges, my conversion rate is about 26%. So not that great. But then what was cool to see is that when I actually meet with someone and have a good like hour-long meeting, so they have time to explain what they're looking for, the fires that are bringing them to look for a financial planner. And then I'm able to see, offer my services and see what they're interested in. That conversion rate goes up to 84%.
Oh, wow.
So it's pretty cool. It's pretty great. And then revenue growth. I kind of excluded 2017 because that's just, a chaotic year getting things. Yeah. But yeah, growth rate was like double in the first year. And then it just keeps like doubling. And so, I mean, that combination has really actually shocked me.
Yeah.
And thinking, oh man, yeah, I guess I could grow it a lot faster if I put more effort in and, let people know I'm here and what I'm doing. So.
Right. Well, what you've seemed to tap into is kind of your natural market and just letting things, the inbound drive your services and how big your firm gets. Do you have a capacity number in mind? And are you putting people on wait lists if they are reaching out to you and you can't serve them?
I've postponed a couple people last year just because I was kind of stretched a little bit, just with life, in general. But other than that, it usually it's a pretty good flow of just kind of keeping me busy. At capacity, I think I would like to get to around 80 clients. And then, if we can work that through with AUM, with my AUM model, if they invest $500,000 or more, essentially hitting that capped mark, then I include comprehensive planning as well. So the long-term goal would be to have about 80 households hitting that point and then just kind of helping them as time goes on. Yeah.
Right. Now, what does that mean for your work at the CPA firm? Is 80 clients while you're still employed somewhere else?
Oh, no,
Okay,
that wouldn't
that's
be.
you full time.
Yeah.
That's you full time.
Yeah,
that's the
be
difference.
full-time.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, for sure. Yep.
So where are you in terms of mapping that route? Is that something you're planning to do right now to make a departure from the CPA firm at some point?
Yeah. And my dad, he's getting closer to retirement age. And so, I mean, with that kind of comes transition of some kind, whether he's looking to sell the practice or, try to bring on additional staff to kind of have like a employee purchase type of thing happening. But regardless of what happens, is that it's usually like a 3 to 5 year transition timeframe, just to help with client retention and things like that. So I'm planning to be here helping with that transition and then, kind of taper things off as, if we bring in more staff, shift some of my responsibilities more, things like that. Yeah.
We hear a lot of folks do part-time while working at CPA firms. You're not the only member that has found real value at working somewhere else while they build their practice. And I'd be really interested for the listeners to understand what kind of benefit has that brought to you in terms of the impact on your business, your ability to think about it, but also to keep revenue coming in. How do you think being part-time has actually benefited you?
Yeah. So working with a CPA firm has been great. I mean, like I said, I happen to be with a family office, so there's more flexibility there. And then we do a lot with tax returns, like most CPA firms. So there's kind of that ebb and flow of the busy seasons. So that valley during the summer frees up more time and capacity to work with my firm. So there's a lot of flexibility involved. And then just working with a CPA firm, there's great synergies there. A lot of what happens in financial planning comes back to taxes, whether it's like retirement savings strategies, investment decisions and withdrawing money or things like that. A lot of roads in financial planning lead back to taxes. And so having that better understanding of, what the forms look like that people receive when they pull money out of a retirement account and how that goes onto the tax return. Just things like that, having that baseline really helps a lot with what I do with my financial planning clients.
Wow. So in terms of expertise, it's been beneficial for you.
Yeah, it's been really great. And then, like I said, with the synergies, my dad's firm, they don't have investment licenses. So it's just kind of a good mesh there. We do still have two separate entities, separate firms. So when I'm, talking to my financial planning clients and I'm recommending they talk with a CPA, I say, well, I mean, my dad, he's a great CPA. I recommend him, but like definitely research the options available and see what makes sense to you. So, and he does the same too, like if clients need help doing a 401k or something that I don't do specifically, we have other advisors that we can refer people to. So, yeah.
Wow, beautiful. I'd love to go back in time to when you decided to launch your firm. And it sounds because you've been intentional about building a lifestyle practice, minimal number of clients to be able to continue to work at your dad's firm. Why even start a business?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I get that a lot because it makes the thing that makes the most sense is just to become a CPA and take over, my dad's practice. The thing, for some reason, have felt like I'm more drawn to the looking forward aspect in financial planning than the looking back side that's inherent with accounting and taxes. So I think that's been one of the main driving forces. And then also when I was younger, my grandma, she got me into investing and she told me to wake up and watch Squawk Box and place trades and stuff, which I don't recommend.
For an 8-year-old.
Yeah, I know, right? So there's just that appeal of investing and looking forward and having that optimism that has more of a draw to me than,
What about being an entrepreneur was attractive to you? Because that is one thing not everyone who comes through the door is quite ready for. And what I love about XY is that we do help people who never thought they could be entrepreneurs. But were you really interested in being a business owner?
No.
Tell me.
So I'm pretty introverted by nature. I mean, before I do anything, I have to fully plan things out. I'm not very good at like winging things. And like with being a business owner, no matter what you're doing, like there's an element of sales, right? And so luckily early on in my process, someone talked about this entrepreneurial roller coaster where, for whatever reason, you're up here and you're having these highs, just feeling at the top of the world. And then for no reason whatsoever, you just plummet and you're like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever done. I'm out of here. Because I've definitely had to keep that in mind when I do get into those valleys, because, like owning your own firm, it can be pretty isolating. There's a lot of great resources with like XYPN in particular, the forums and like the way that you try to help people get into study groups. There's a lot of great things out there, but at the same time, it can feel a little isolating, like just constantly thinking through like your fee structure day in and day out for a while and things like that. And of course, some of that is self-inflicted, right. my own self doing it to myself. I think there's a lot more that I could have done as far as investing in other resources like marketing and things like that, that I've just done by myself, to kind of keep costs low And I think the main driver was I initially saw back in 2016, I saw Sophia Bera's article, the one how to start a firm for under 10,000. Oh yeah. And that actually turned out to be pretty true for me. I don't know if it is for most people. My average expenses are about $9,500 a year.
Wow.
So I keep things pretty lean because I just do everything myself,
Right.
which, pros and cons.
Right.
But yeah, it's been a good ride so far.
Well, that's fascinating because it does sound, thank you for the annual expense number, because it does put it in perspective that the risk wasn't as big for you to do this.
Yeah, it wasn't that big. And that's the reason why I did it, right? Because I wasn't, getting loans. I wasn't, shoving all of my money, like retirement savings and stuff, into this. It was more of just kind of cash flow. I've been able to fund it. And now, fortunately, I broke even and made a profit last year. So that was great. And I just foresee it growing beyond that. So.
Beautiful. I appreciate the perspective. And I'm wondering, your other option, of course, was to just go work at a financial planning firm full time. Did you consider that as just being able to get that taste of working in the future with people and not having to have the ownership?
Yeah. I definitely did. So I did a master's degree in finance, and I graduated in May of 2016. And during that time, I did an internship at Goldman Sachs. And it was a great experience. I learned a lot. But it also kind of hit home to me that I didn't want to be in, the corporate finance realm. Just the work-life balance with the family and things didn't quite make sense to me. So that really drove me when I was getting ready to graduate to look into financial planning firms. And at that point, I didn't know what fee only was. So I just, interviewed with anyone I could, all the firms with people's names and everyone.
Good for you.
But it was like other people, I was kind of disheartened by the fact that it was more of a sales job as opposed to, actually putting people into services that they might need more, in my opinion. I was learning at school about expense ratios and loads and things like that. And then I had one professor that basically said, if you ever pay a load, like in a mutual fund, either going in or getting out, like you're just an idiot. And I was like, whoa. Because then like the next day I had an interview with the company and asked them about loads. And they're like, oh yeah, we have loads on the front. And I'm like, well, if I'm learning that you should never do this, because there's plenty of options to avoid that, how can I, with good conscience, sit there and recommend clients do that, So none of them really sat well with me. And I just couldn't find anything that like filled that need. I essentially, like a fee only firm is what I was looking for, but didn't know it.
Right.
So I couldn't find anything. So yeah, I just Googled how do you start your own firm, found Sophia Bera's article, found XYPN, and here we are.
Hook, line, and sinker. Yeah, that's how you start like a firm, folks.
Yeah.
So you really didn't understand, or didn't not understand. You sensed that there was something different you could do where you wouldn't be dealing with this guilt of possibly not working in the best interest of people. So then you land on fee only. Was that really when you as you found Sophia's article, you found XY, was when you started really painting the picture of what fee only was?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that was it.
Beautiful.
I had known about like the CFP designation, but the people that I would meet with at these firms were CFPs. So I was like, well, that's got to mean something, but they're still doing this basically just because of the business model. And so, yeah, that's when I started developing this thought of like, well, there's got to be a different way to do it. Not necessarily, better or worse, to each their own, but just a different way to helping people.
I love that. Okay. Very cool story. Thanks for sharing that. Spencer, you've got 5 kids. I'm super interested in how the heck you balance all of this.
Oh man, yes, I have 5 kids. I mean, literally like a handful of kids. Yeah, when I launched my firm, I had a 9-month-old, a 2-year-old, and a 4-year-old. Since then, we've had 2 other kids, and it's just like I don't know if you're a fan of Jim Gaffigan, the comedian, but how he says, what's it like having a 4th kid? Like, imagine you're drowning and someone hands you a baby. It's very true. I always say that we need or my wife and I, we always joke and say that we need a baby on board sign, one of those like triangle things. And it's not necessarily for, drivers to be like, hey, don't hit us, we've got a baby on board. It's more of like a warning sign. Like, we're driving and we're tying shoes and making lunch all at the same time. We're not texting, but we're safe.
And we're filing tax returns and serving clients also.
Oh yeah. Caution, we veer veer lanes.
Wow. But honestly, when you think about your week, what does time allocation look like to you?
Yeah. So I've definitely had to become a morning person, which there's a lot of power with that. I think there's a reason why, you hear of Tim Cook and Oprah and people like that waking up early and, having dedicated time before their life starts. So, I mean, every day I wake up at 6:30. When I was doing the CFP coursework, it was earlier. It was much earlier than that because I just needed more time. Yeah, so I focus mainly on my firm duties in the morning, and then work at the CPA firm. Can kind of jump in and out with all the flexibility all around with everything as needed throughout the day. And then at night, it's mainly just family time. That's when I try to, connect and spend time with my family because they're really the most important thing. Like them, and I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and that connection with God and the optimism and hope that it brings into your life. Coupled that with the family relationship that I have. It's really those 2 things are what motivate me in life. They're the why factors.
And that's a lifestyle practice. That's a beautiful, beautiful analysis of what is most important. And you keeping your client base small right now so that you're not getting rapid, crazy text messages in the middle of the night that pull you away from the kids because you have 100 clients. Is a decision everyone needs to make. Do they have a life outside their firm that they need to keep up with? And some folks come in ready to roll, guns blazing, and everyone's taking care of all the kids and they're set on taking care of the business, but you've really wanted to do it all. And therefore you've made sacrifices in terms of growth and how quickly you scale and whether you leave the CPA firm and otherwise.
Yeah, exactly. And another thing that kind of helps me with my time management is, I'm kind of old school. I have an iPhone, but it might as well be a flip phone. I mean, I don't get notifications. Like, the only noise that it makes is when my wife calls or texts me. So I try to just, minimize apps. I'm not really on social media at all because things like that, they just take me away from the things that I value more, like my family and my firm, and just being present with everything that I'm trying to do. So that definitely plays a part in that time management as well. I don't have as much of a capacity to sit down and play a mobile game or something like that,
So are you saying you have not watched all 18 seasons of Survivor?
I haven't watched Survivor, but I made it to the end of 24, and
okay.
Oh man, that series of any I've ever seen, they really hit home how much time you've wasted.
Okay, good. So you do have some guilty pleasures.
For sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Well, Spencer, I liked your honesty at the start where you mentioned that you've had some peaks and valleys in terms of kind of just the mental experiment of being a dad, being an employee, and then being a business owner. Can you talk a bit more about that and what that meant to you and your family and how you handled it?
Yeah, like I said, I mean, that entrepreneurial roller coaster, it's a real thing. I mean, I would guess other people might be more able to deal with it than I am, just with my personality. But I mean, it just comes out of nowhere.
Mm.
And you just kind of start feeling like, oh man, like, am I doing the right thing? Should I just like hang up my hat and go work for another firm? And so I feel like have these recurring conversations primarily with my wife about that. And she's been really fantastic, just helping to keep me grounded. I mean,
Mhm.
I'll be having like a rough day, and then I'll get an email from her saying like, "Hey, you're doing such a good job, proud of you,"
Oh,
that kind of thing. And I'm like, "Oh, you're too good to me."
give her my email address
I
too.
know, right?
So is the insecurity coming from imposter syndrome or the amount of time you're spending, or is there guilt around how you serve your clients? What generates some of the insecurity for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is imposter syndrome, to be honest, because one thing that I realized kind of early on is I just get in my head a lot.
Mm.
And whether it's like with the business or developing a financial plan for a client, I'll just start kind of like hashing things out over and over different
Mm.
ways. But then the thing that has helped the most is I just schedule meetings with clients, because that really, like, I always after a client meeting just come out on this high of
Oh,
just being like, hey, like, yeah, this does feel good. Like, they were really appreciative of what I was able to do. I feel great with the advice I was able to offer to them. So one of the things that I do is when I start to feel like that, kind of get into a slump, is I just like, okay, who can I schedule a meeting with?
oh,
Like, let's just shoot out my calendar and get something going, because it's awesome. That's really one of the best ways that I've found to kind of battle that.
oh, I love that. Well, I heard two things there, that one, your heartbeat and motivation really comes from that interpersonal relationship with your clients. But I'm also hearing that this is probably what has kept you in business this long, is that you've scaled really slowly, so that if you had 80 clients right now and they were all asking you for hard questions and answers, you might go out of business because of the kind of stress that may have caused in terms of imposter syndrome.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And definitely, developing processes and stuff. I'm still working through that, still trying new things. But I have definitely come a long way. But yeah, just like you were saying, if I had 80 clients and I was back in 2018, yeah,
Mm,
I would have been like, nope, this isn't worth it. Not happening.
interesting.
Yeah.
Good. Great reminder to listeners that there's a number of different avenues into this. And once you're here, there's a number of different ways to approach it. I must ask, you told me that you work with 20-year-olds and 70-year-olds.
Yeah.
How do you do it? And what's your stance on the niching game?
Yeah. So, well, I would say first off that comes from probably primarily from my dad and how he handles his practice. I mean, to a fault, he cannot say no to people. I mean, so for example, when he went to one of his clients' houses, they're kind of special needs, and he would go to their house and like help them clean their house, and like he took them to the hospital, and like this is the guy he's their CPA, but he's like their primary caregiver almost too. So he just has like a huge heart and cannot
Wow.
say no, as much as like I'm constantly telling him like, you're overworked. You need to say no sometimes. So I think I get a lot of that from him, and just wanting to help people however I can and however they would like me to.
Mm,
But definitely from like a business standpoint, it doesn't make as much sense as a niche, because just figuring out processes specifically defined around a target market, that would be a game changer for sure. As far as a niche goes, it's really hard to pick one, because I am pretty broad in what I like. And I think the closest I've got into is working with people in the tech industry, because I am pretty passionate about FIRE, financial independence, retire early.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the most worthwhile things that anyone could try to achieve in their life is to just be financially independent.
Totally.
Because then you can live the life you want, however you want to do that. If it's, if you still want to work, you can. If you don't have to. So I really like that. And that's really conducive with people in the tech industry, because usually, they're pretty young and they can make a lot of money right out of college or whatever. And not just that like optimism for what they could get to in a realistic timeline, but they do have pretty complex needs like stock options and all their employee benefits. There's a lot of support that is needed in that community. So, I mean, that's probably the closest I've come to a niche.
Could you talk a little bit more about FIRE? We don't talk about that often on the podcast. I'd love for you maybe just to give a couple tidbits around, as an advisor, how do you know, is that even someone's option in the future?
Yeah. I mean, FIRE, it can seem kind of complex, but if you think about it, it's not that crazy. There's lots of podcasts and resources online that are available for the FIRE community. But basically, if you think about it, you have like your income and your savings, as well as like your spending and everything. But if you're able to save pretty aggressively, then eventually that wealth builds up, and the interest and returns that you're making from that kind of nest egg, eventually that offsets your expenses. And so, like, by definition, you don't need to work and have like a paycheck as long as you're managing your assets appropriately. And obviously there's a lot of tax strategies that go into that. There's different things like, you should be shoving things into tax deferred accounts and then kind of controlling your taxes throughout your like retirement by doing Roth conversions and things like that. So it's a really awesome concept that I honestly think anyone should consider and see what you can do. There's like I said, plenty of resources online about it. But yeah, I love exploring that with clients and just seeing, mapping out their plan and then just cranking their like retirement age down as short as possible, just to see what it would look like as far as their goals for, vacations or whatever. Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
Wow, I love that. And is that a niche that you could build into, that you're really working with the FIRE community?
I don't really, do anything necessarily with the FIRE community yet. I would like to. I feel like I'm getting more and more clients that do that are looking for advice in that area. They're in their 40s and have X amount of millions of dollars saved, and they just want to know, can I retire? What would that look like? It seems to be popping up more and more. And yeah, like I said, I think it's one of the greatest things that anyone could strive for. So I would like to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd heard, I forget who I was talking about with this, that the FIRE niche is hard because folks who are FIRE oriented are already kind of holding themselves accountable. So the accountability component of the relationship maybe isn't as strong of a pitch.
Yeah.
But I'm interested, Spencer, you mentioned you're part of a church, and I'm wondering, this is such a giving profession, and it sounds like you come from a real giving family, that if you get a CPA with your dad, you also get a friend and someone else. But yeah. I'm wondering, how do you see your firm really being able to help in that giving way? Do you feel like you're getting that that part of you fulfilled through this kind of work?
Yeah. And that's kind of been a two-edged sword, I think, because one of the things that I've struggled with in starting my firm was charging people.
Oh, wow.
Right? I mean, so one of the things that I actually would like to do, maybe later down the road, depending on the opportunity, is just get into teaching as well. Because it's just heartbreaking to hear, the statistics of how financially illiterate the country is. And like financial strife is one of the leading causes of divorce. And so it's things like that have really pushed me into the industry because, I mean, my background growing up with a dad who's a CPA, we talked about money, and it's just kind of common nature to me to have these different budgeting principles or pay off credit cards every month and just things like that to me are just, you just do it. That's just what you do. But a lot of people miss out on that. And so when I initially started my firm, my pricing was just rock bottom.
Interesting.
and because I really wanted to just have an offering for young people that, they just didn't have assets or income or anything really. I just wanted to help people. And I thought, well, if I can help people and, not have the cost be as much of a barrier, then that would work. But that's not a very sustainable business model. So I think one of the XYPN coaches recommended that I, reevaluate the pricing and then just realize that if I'm able to build my firm to a sustainable thing, then that gives you more power to help those, more pro bono and things like that. Or, as the firm expands, and if it did grow into more of like an enterprise type organization, then there's different options available and bringing on interns and things like that. So
isn't that so crazy that also one of the core fundamental financial pieces of advice some of us knew is pay yourself first. Yet even you had a hard time saying, I have value and I need to pay myself first so I can do more good long term.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. It's kind of contradictory.
It is interesting. Could you talk a bit more about the price hike and what that felt like? Because I do see that over and over and over again, that folks come in and they're pricing sub $100 per month. And as CFPs, your hourly rate's a lot more than that.
Right.
How did you get to that point where you were ready to raise fees? And did you do that with new clients or your existing base?
Yeah. So when I raise fees, it's just with new clients. Honestly, I've been kind of transitioning away from the like ongoing planning and just doing more like kind of like one-time comprehensive plans and then like touch-ups with like an hourly engagement as people need help, as their life changes, as different things pop up. But yeah, the fee increase, I mean, it really just boiled down to that. I forgot her name. Oh man, she's going to be so mad at me. Anyway.
Could be Arlene.
Yes, I think it was Arlene, I think. And yeah, she was just like, well, I mean, you want to help people, but you have to actually have something or you're not really helping people, right? If you just fizzle away and, you're not charging enough, then you're not here in 10 years, then think of all the people that have missed out on being helped. So I thought that was a very good perspective. And then just kind of getting, feedback on what other professionals are doing with their practices and being like, oh yeah, I mean, that makes sense. And then just looking at my revenue goals and, client goals and things like that and kind of backing into it a little bit more. It's felt great. It's felt really good.
Yeah. And Spencer mentioned Arlene Moss, who's our executive business coach here at XYPN. She's been with the team for a number of years. She has a heavy hand in the launcher programs that we have for folks launching. So that conversation around fees and niche are the two conversations that never really end, no matter what business phase you're in, because your niche evolves. It gets more narrow or more broad as you approach, different inflection points. But the idea of how much to charge is so hard. And we at XYPN really, really try to pound in this idea that you are valuable. You are providing a deep and important service. And I really sense as a consumer, the confidence around that value is what's attractive. And then anyone who would quote me $50 a month, I'd be like, what the heck are you doing? Because there's no way you're going to only spend 20 minutes on me all month.
Yeah.
As you think through your future, Spencer, I know that you've mentioned wanting to serve upwards of 80 clients, eventual move away from the CPA firm. Don't tell your dad yet. But what do you think the next year or two, what are you going to be really working on?
That's a good question. The next year or two, I really want to hammer out more sustainable processes because I really appreciate technology and the power that you can harness with having appropriate things in place. So with like my CRM, just mapping out like email templates and task lists and things like that. Because right now I kind of like jump back to other client engagements. I'm like, oh, they're similar. Let me look at this one. What email did I send them? Like, so I have it all like mapped out, just not formalized. So I really want to do that because then it's more of it's a easier process to follow. I did my undergraduate degree in psychology and specifically like human factors and cognitive psychology and how people interact with things around them. And I remember learning that checklists are huge. It's such a way to help with the cognitive load of someone going through a process or task. That's why like hospitals, they have checklists they diligently have to go through, because if you miss one thing on that checklist, someone could be in danger.
Totally.
Yeah, so I really want to kind of focus on the firm in that sense and build out more defined processes. And then also, I'm planning to start blogging because I do like writing. I think it's a really powerful tool for everyone on the internet, but also for me for processing things and learning. I love teaching, like I've mentioned, and I think one of the best ways to learn new things is to teach it. So I think I would enjoy blogging, as well as it could be a good tool to help have more exposure out in the interwebs. So those are like the two near future goals.
Okay, great. I just love that you built this lifestyle practice and that it has allowed you to do the things that you want to do and continue to get the experience and exposure to the tax side of things. If you could have done something differently as you built this lifestyle practice, what would you have done differently?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's always hard to say, because I really am happy where I am now. It was a crazy ride for a couple of years. At least the first 2 years were really wild. I mean, I looked at like the timeline of how things happened. I like looked through emails and stuff. So I took the Series 65 exam January of 2017. And then in March 1st, I signed up for the CFP coursework. And then the next day I joined XYPN. And then like the next month, one of my grandmas passed away. In June of that year, we got a puppy, and we found out that same day my wife was pregnant with our fourth child.
Whoa.
In August, my firm was approved. So it was just like hit the ground running. And then, other kids, CFP exam later, like in years. So just looking back at that, I was like, whoa, I don't know what I was thinking. So, I mean, I feel like I just jumped in, It's like other things in life. You never know, like the timing's never going to be right. Like for having a kid, like you're never going to be ready for a kid or just anything like that. So I figured that if I jumped in and gave it like an honest effort and did my best and, did what I needed to, like by getting the CFP designation and working through the different things that I needed to do, it would only help, right? There's no way it could hurt, that experience of going through it. So ultimately, I'm happy where I am now. But I guess if I could go back, it would have been nice to know what a fee-only firm was. And maybe I would have tried harder to find a job there. Maybe one that has paternity leave benefits too.
Yeah, those sound really good right now, huh?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so if I had been working at a firm there and built up savings, worked on my CFP, with the umbrella of that organization, that would have been great. But maybe another thing I thought of is, if when I first started, I just kind of didn't really know what I didn't know, and I was really intimidated by the compliance side of everything. And so with that, I kept my firm and my dad's firm very separate.
Yep.
But I think going back, it would have been nice to kind of learn with him together, and maybe built something together, and like had an add-on branch within his firm and make it more of like a one-stop shop for your financial needs sort of thing. But yeah, other than that, I mean, like I said, I'm happy I went through all that fire, because now I feel,
Totally.
feeling like I'm in a good place.
Totally. Well, I think you did it the right way for what you were up against. And, to know CFP was a designation you wanted and needed to bring value to your clients, that you continued to pursue that. It's very easy as life kind of continues to chase us that things fall to the wayside and priorities shift. And it just sounds like, having gone through 2017, 2018, you really were able to keep your eye on the prize, which is that you want to have a firm that serves the people you like to work with. And that's the goal here. Ultimately, we want to bring financial planning to the next generation and to folks who are underserved. And there's a lot of different ways to do it, and there's no one right way to do it. But you, Spencer, my friend, have been around for a number of years, so you've made it. And I'm really impressed that you're really looking at a bright future about how you want to take the next 4 to 5 years, and what that means for your family and for your role at the CPA firm, and most importantly, for your clients.
Yeah, definitely. It has been an amazing experience. And I mean, I guess just going back to the CFP, that really was one of the pivotal keys to success, I would say. Like, I looked at the different contacts that I had throughout this time, and it just, like, right when I got my CFP, it just doubled, and it's just been continuing to grow, just because, I mean, it is one of those like hot button items that people are looking for, and it makes you just more findable. Totally. Yeah.
Wow, Spencer. Well, if you can believe it, we are wrapping up this podcast, and we've just had a really fabulous conversation about what you've built. And I want to thank you for building it for our community, and thank you for being part of our community. Any final words for the folks who might be driving home right now, thinking about chewing on, debating launching their own firm? Any words of advice?
Well, I remembered one of the things, going back to the very beginning with my firm name. I remembered one of the things that made me settle with Rooted Interest was I found this quote by someone named Robert Greene. I have no association with him. I don't know anything about him.
He could be a real jerk, so watch out.
I know. But he had this one good moment. If he's, in jail now or something for who knows what. This is one quote that I found. So he said, just from Google, with such a deep-rooted interest, you can withstand the setbacks and failures, the days of drudgery, and the hard work that are always a part of any creative action. You can ignore the doubters and critics. You will then feel personally committed to solving the problem and will not rest until you do so. And I think that kind of just sums up my experience a lot. It changes your life for sure. I mean, but there's no time like the present. The best time to have planted a tree was 30 years ago. Second best is today. So, I mean, I just think, there's risk involved. It'll get you out of your comfort zone, but ultimately you'll grow, you'll learn, and you'll be better for it in the long run.
I love that. Spencer, you were a total joy to talk with. I think our listeners are going to have really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much from XYPN.
Yeah, thank you, Maddie.
Avocado toast, selfies, a mountain of student loan debt. Gen Y is anything but traditional, and with over 75 million people, it's a population you don't want to ignore. Learn more about how to serve this unique population in our guide called Attract and Profitably Serve Millennial Clients in Your RIA. Discover 3 key ways to tap into the millennial market and 6 things that they want from their financial advisor. Visit xyplanningnetwork.com/millennials for your free copy. Be sure to join our VIP community at xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to hang out with other XYPN radio listeners, ask questions for future mailbag episodes, and finally, to find a community of like-minded financial advisors. Thank you so much for joining me today. We'll see you next time.
You are not alone and you are not crazy. It's scary starting, building, and growing your own financial planning firm, and that's why we put together a free private community just for you, the Cutting Edge Financial Planner. Go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP or text XYPN Radio to 33344 and join a network of thousands ready to change the lives of Gen X and Gen Y clients.